Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Gaming Aroma podcast. It is Sunday yet again. I am your weary host KDB, back once more to talk and ramble about some video game stuff. This is episode 10. That's 10 weeks. That is a 10-week streak. I don't know about you, but I've impressed myself. I think when I started this podcast, I said I was going to try and do weekly, but that there was no guarantees that it might be bi-weekly or something like that. I've really managed to make it work. So, well done to me. Big pat on the back. So I am really, really fucking knackered this week. This is definitely not going to be a long one. So I've got a 10-week streak, but this is probably going to be the shortest episode yet. I'm coming off the back of 6 days in a row at work. Now, that is 6 days in a row at work off the back of 2 days at Chessington as well, which didn't really feel like a holiday. Plus 2 days after that, where I had a family member in hospital, and I spent a lot of time in hospital. For the past 9 days, I have not stopped. And yesterday at work, we had a spring plant fair event, which I had to help run. Which obviously loads of members of the public came to, and I was on my feet all day. And boo-hoo, poor me. I know, whinge. But I am running on fumes. But what is it? It's Sunday, and tomorrow is Monday. I have tomorrow off work because I did 6 days in a row. That's an in lieu day. To some of my American listeners, do you get in lieu days? I think you just get paid overtime, right? I don't know how it works in America. Overtime is not really... that's a lie. It is a thing here in the UK. It's not a thing at the place I work, though. Like, I'm salaried. There's no way to really clock overtime. You can request extra hours if there's some kind of emergency, but generally you just take a day back in lieu. So... where was I? I've lost my train of thought. Busy weeks. I told you I was tired. Oh my God. I was talking all day yesterday as well, speaking to like all the members of the public, so my voice is kind of hoarse. But there is some video game stuff to talk about. Oh, firstly, the weather is amazing as well. We had those who listen to some of my other shows know that I like to talk about the weather. Have I ever done like the weather report thing on this show? I do it on the Fallout show all the time. Because the weather is news. The weather is news in the UK. I speak to some of my American buddies, and obviously you have the same weather. Some of you, like 300 days a year. Here where I live, the weather is different 5 times a day. And that's quite common across England. It can go from scorching hot to freezing balls cold. Ball freezing cold in a matter of moments, and then back again, and then it rains. We've obviously had a really shit start to spring. It's been raining basically constantly for like 3 months, but the past few days, this past week, the weather's been good. Yesterday was like the best day of the year weather-wise. It was really good, obviously, for our event at work as well. So weather's good, feeling good. Family and I are going out to do a few things today, and then hopefully snatch on to some of the sunshine in the garden, because it's supposed to be shit tomorrow. So wherever you are, I hope the weather's good. Let me know. Give me your weather report in the comments. Tweet me, email me. You don't have my email address, but you'll figure it out. Right, yes, video games. There's a few things to talk about. Well, actually, that's a lie. There's kind of like one big thing to talk about. It's funny because obviously I spoke to David last week about game in our night, and I really, really enjoyed that episode. That was like a focused topic episode, which I want to do more of, because sometimes there's not a lot of news. Doing like weekly news chat is a fool's errand, because you have really slow news weeks where there's nothing to talk about. So, and then you have to do filler, and your podcast episode is shit. So hopefully you don't think that's what this week is. But I've got lots of ideas for topical episodes I've talked about. I knew that this was episode 10, and I thought, should I do like a top 10 of something? I haven't had the time to do that. I just told you I've worked 6 days in a row and was busy the days before that. I have not had time to put any kind of top 10 together. So, but I would like to do more top 10s in future. So there's no main topic. But yeah, I want to talk about handhelds. I want to talk about collecting. I want to talk about budgets. I want to talk about Game Pass. I want to talk about PS Plus store. And topical episodes. And I still do have other people that are going to come on and chat with me. My buddy Ark is going to come on and talk about superhero games and live service games as well at some point. And just gaming and achievement hunting because, yeah, he's one of the proest gamers out there that I know. And there's a lot of questions I've got for him. So I look forward to that. And you can look forward to that as well when it actually happens. But this week, there was the main news this week. There was an article that popped off on Windows Central, which talked about how this is going to be some business talk, roll your eyes. But yeah, what I was going to say was I talked to David last week about game, but then prior to that, I did a bit of an industry rant, and I mentioned how it does feel like every single week, without fail, there is a piece of news that shows you, just kind of reinforces the way that the gaming industry is going, and that it's not the same gaming industry as before, that console exclusivity is dying, the closed walled garden platforms are going away. And this is not just gaming, this is tech as well. Look at what Apple are going through at the moment, having to open up, their hardware and their store. So yeah, it's all being clamped down on, it's all changing, and just because of budgets and the way the world's going and the way people consume and use tech and consume services, nobody wants to be locked into anything. So you have to be smart about it if you want to survive and evolve. And not to give the $1 trillion corporation too much credit, but Microsoft are very smart about it. They've always been smart about it. Here's a question to give you some perspective before I talk about the gaming specifically. How many of you out there listening to this podcast today use iWork? iWork. You know what iWork is? I know that there's people listening to this going, I have no fucking clue what iWork is. I know what it is. Some of you will know what it is. Some of you may actually use it. And some of you going, yeah, I use iWork. My point. So iWork, for those that don't know, is the Apple equivalent of Microsoft Office. iWork has a few apps. It has, I'm going to struggle to remember them all now. Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. So Pages is basically the Word equivalent. Numbers is the Excel equivalent. And Keynote is like the PowerPoint equivalent, right? Maybe it is just those three. And then, because obviously they have, GarageBand and iMovie as well, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, how many of you use iWork on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, I can hear all three of you shouting loud at the top of your lungs, saying, I use it, I use iWork. Cool. You're like 0.0003% of planet Earth. Because everybody else uses Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And those who don't really use Office use Google Docs. Google Docs is bigger than iWork. Okay, so that sounded like I was stating a fact. I'm just going to Google that. Hey, I'm going to Google that. I wonder what answer Google's going to give me when I ask this question. What is bigger, iWork or Google Docs? iWork Suite versus Google Docs. Google Docs. There's no real numbers here. But yeah, so these are like the three big ones, right? Google Docs, Office, and iWork. Now, when I first got on Mac in like 2006 or 7, I dabbled with using iWork. I very quickly just found ways to get OpenOffice on my Mac, and then eventually Google Docs came in, and then I managed to get Office for my Mac. The point here is that, like I said, I don't want to give the $1 trillion company too much credit, but the reason Microsoft are so successful in a world where companies like Apple and Google and Facebook and etc., everybody, they all dominate in their fields. The reason why Microsoft continue to remain successful is their software and services. Microsoft Office is used by pretty much everybody on planet Earth that has a computer. 90% of people, right? Surely. I'm sure, maybe it's not like 90%. I'm sure a lot of people use Google Docs and OpenOffice as well. But yeah, I'm not I'm not a statistician. One of those people. I think we can make safe assumptions, right? So yeah, how many of you out there use iWork? Like none of you. But lots of people use Office. And I wanted to give that context before I talk about this article that kind of popped off. Here's the headline here from Windows News Central. Windows Central. Xbox takes over PlayStation Store, Fallout top charts, and Microsoft Project Stargate. Now, the other two, Project Stargate isn't sort of a thing I'm really going to talk about, but there was, two aspects to this article, which I'm just going to read for you here. Where's it gone? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm just going to take little quotes out for the article here. Quote, in a headline no one would have expected 10 years ago, Microsoft took over the PlayStation Store this week. No, Microsoft did not hack the PlayStation Store or buy Sony. The tech giant did, however, claim several of the top spots in the PlayStation Store. Perhaps most notably, Microsoft-owned titles held more top 25 spots than Sony's collective works. Microsoft has invested billions of dollars into gaming over recent years, including acquisitions of Activision, Blizzard, and Bethesda. Between franchises acquired through those purchases and other popular titles, it's not shocking to see that PlayStation Store top charts full of Microsoft-owned games. In many ways, this week served as an example of why Microsoft invested so much money in acquiring companies and investing in Xbox games on different platforms. So there you go, and that's the important context. So Microsoft, Xbox have loads of their owned games topping the charts on PlayStation. Lots of games being bought on PlayStation are Xbox games. And yes, that is because of the acquisition. Microsoft and Xbox didn't make all of those games from scratch, of course. But those days, they're disappearing. So this is their strategy, and this is the thing where a few times in the past, Microsoft and Xbox have been well ahead of the curve and well ahead of the game, and it's why they are still around today. People like to poke fun at Xbox. Xbox is making more money than it ever has. I don't want to misquote here. Does Xbox make more money than Windows? Gaming is now Microsoft's third largest biggest business, bigger than Windows. Microsoft made $62 billion in Q2. Gaming contributed $7.11 billion, more than 5.26 from billion from Windows. Excuse me. That's wild to think, right? So obviously Microsoft have hardware, they have services, they have an OS. They have Windows and they have gaming. And they've got other stuff I'm probably thinking about, probably not thinking about. They got their fingers in lots of pies. But Xbox, people make fun of Xbox. Oh, nobody's buying an Xbox console. Xbox is dying. They're going away. No, they're not. No, they're not going away. They're spreading like a fucking virus. Which is one way you could put it. I thought back in the day let's take a little trip down memory lane. The launch and release of the Xbox One. This is something that I think I've done a tweet about in the past, but everyone knows that the Xbox One was, many saw that as like almost that could have been the death knell for Xbox. They ballsed that launch up so much, and that was purely from a messaging point of view. We all know they came out there and they focused on the multimedia box and TV and movies and Kinect 2. And games were sort of took a back seat, and this really, really backfired, and they had to do a quick U-turn and all this kind of stuff. The DRM thing as well. But the fact is, they were doing was kind of particularly with Kinect. They had identified the way the world was moving, and they wanted to capitalize on that and get in front of it and be that multi-use box in everyone's home, in the way that smart TVs are now, in the way that Alexa is now, or Google Home, or these other smart speakers and smart homes, smart light bulbs, everything. When the Xbox One launched, I was the use case for it. I ticked every single box because at the time I had Sky TV. and you could run your Sky TV set-top box through the Xbox as like the main interface, and then on your Xbox you navigate to your broadcast television through your Xbox. So your Xbox functioned as your main hub for everything, and then of course you jump to your games, and then of course you had your music as well. And you could do an incredible thing which they took away, and I lament them for taking this away. That Xbox Snap feature where you could snap a TV channel and a game, and you could snap two apps together on the same screen, that's no longer a thing. I used that all the time. And like I say, I was the very specific use case because I'm a huge football fan, or at least I've talked on other podcasts how my love for top flight football has waned in recent years for various reasons. When the Xbox One came out, I was as big as anybody. I was hardcore into football. I lived with my two mates who I lived with. We love football as well. Or did I live with my current girlfriend / wife at the time? Can't remember. Anyway, so I used that feature and it impressed me, and they had a whole TV commercial about it and stuff, and I was like, yes, this is perfect. And many times I was playing my game and I had the football snapped on the screen. It sounds crazy in hindsight, but it's the type of thing whereas today where I'll listen to a podcast while I'm playing a game, you can kind of have a football game on while you're playing a game. And now I might just, depending on what the game is, the football match, I should say, I might have it on the TV in the background. I'm not watching every single second. I might be playing a game on my phone, doing something else on my laptop while it's on. I like to multitask that way. So Microsoft, they tick that box for me. The Kinect, the voice commands, the Xbox on, Xbox go to TV, Xbox record that, Xbox take a screenshot, Xbox do this, that, and the other. I would come home, walk up the stairs, before I'm even at the lounge, Xbox on, and by the time I got to the lounge and sat down, the TV was on the screen. And I hadn't had to touch the remote, hadn't got to look for the fucking remote. I loved all that, and I used it. I was a day one Xbox One adopter, and I appreciate there are many people out there that didn't have Sky TV and didn't use TVs in that way, so it was a big risk. But for me personally, and I know there are others out there that had the same sort of mindset as me or use case as me, they were just too early. They were just too early because before I go on, it's funny. I remember this is an example of how Microsoft fucked it up and were too ahead of the game. In the midst of all this, I'd got my Xbox One and I was loving running it through, running the TV through it and stuff like that. And my music, does anyone remember Xbox Music? That's not a thing anymore, right? I had a subscription to Xbox Music because it would run through all the same package. Xbox Music subscription. It's now known as Groove Music Pass, formerly Xbox Music or Zune Music Pass. Yeah, it's a discontinued audio player software and application. Yeah, it discontinued in when? 2023? No, sooner than that. 2017. Yeah, Xbox Music. I loved that. I didn't really have Spotify at the time. I did not have Spotify at the time, and because I did everything through my Xbox, it was perfect for me. So I had Xbox Music as well, and it was, again, it did things that Spotify does now on your TV, where it would play artwork on the screen and stuff, and it just kind of all worked really well together. I remember previously adopting to Apple, I loved how it all worked well together. That Xbox One felt like that use case for Xbox One was the closest Microsoft got to their ecosystem fluidly talking to each other in the best way that Apple kind of does now, still today. And I'm not saying that Microsoft's and Xbox ecosystem doesn't talk well together now, because it does, but they just seem to have fewer services. There's no Xbox Music, for example. They do have YouTube Music. No, they don't. Of course, that's Google. I'm being an idiot. Yeah, but they had to take that away. Obviously, they have no mixer anymore and stuff like that. Anyway, the example I wanted to use was I went to Curry's to buy a sound bar. And another thing the Xbox One had, which the Series X does not, is an optical output. And I got a sound bar with an optical output, and I explained to them, when I was taking it home, I was like, oh, this is my setup for this soundbar, is it going to work? They're like, yeah, no problem. Couldn't get me out the door quick enough. I took my soundbar home, and the setup to get the soundbar in, I think it turned out that I couldn't. I could get the game audio coming out, but I couldn't get the broadcast audio coming out. This was, so when is this? 2014. This is 10 years ago. I'm really struggling to remember the details. Anyway, there was some kind of conflict with using optical with the soundbar. Oh, no, that was it. Yeah, so my Xbox had optical, but they said that the soundbar didn't have optical, but I could run it through HDMI. And I was like, okay, fine, yeah. And it turns out I couldn't run it through HDMI. I could get the Xbox out, but the broadcast of the Sky TV and stuff, the audio wouldn't come through. And it didn't work. You needed it to be optical, basically. So I took it back to Curry's, and I said, you said this is going to work. It's not working. The audio is muted. Sorry, this is maybe a really boring story for people listening, but so just imagine me 10 years ago dragging the soundbar back to Curry's like 3 hours later. Same day, went back in, spoke to the same guy. And no, I spoke to somebody else because the guy that told me it was going to work didn't seem to understand what I needed. And like one of the senior people in Curry's came over to talk to me, and I explained to him my setup, right? And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's probably not going to work. You'll need an optical." Which, to buy an optical soundbar was like another £100 or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, take me through your setup again. There's got to be a way to make this work." And when I explained to him that I have the Sky TV running through the Xbox, his response to me was, "Do you need to do that?" And I have never forgotten that. And because it is so poignant of like that moment for Xbox One and how that tech was all trying to run stuff together. Because do you need to do it? No. You really do not need to do it. But I was part of the very specific use case where all of my stuff and my Sky TV and my gaming would all work together through this box. So did I need to do it? No. But in order to get the most out of my Xbox One, yeah, I kind of did. I wanted to. And he was just like, he was like, "Oh, it's not going to work. You'll have to run it separately and stuff like this." Yeah, and this shows how the conflict, because Microsoft were ahead of the curve in how people run their smart living rooms and everything through the apps on their TV, which we do now, right? Sky TV as a broadcast service is dying. A separate Sky box that they do. It's just the price that it costs and what you get. I think I talked about it on 2 Carrots, that it's just not worth the money anymore because of what you get from all the other services, which are just built-in apps on your TV. You don't need a separate box. And many TVs record stuff and things like that now. Anyway, yeah, so they were ahead of the game, and devices out there weren't ready for the setup and the way that it was all working together. So I could never use my soundbar properly. I had to use it. I think I used it like I had to switch between optical for gaming or HDMI for TV or something like that. Yeah, so that I always remember that, how it was ticking every boxes, but it was like, you're just slightly too early, Microsoft, because not everything out there is working with this right now. And they were coming off the back of the bad PR with not focusing on games and stuff, so it was just a downhill slope from them. Obviously, Don Matrick was fired from Xbox and all that. That's the history, the lore that we all know and love. Yeah, so that's the trip down memory lane to Xbox One, where they were ahead of the game. Because look at homes now, as I said, with Alexa and the TVs and everything. It's all doing the things that Xbox One was doing. And I'd love to have, again, this is another thing I'd love to have another conversation about. Sony weren't doing this. They were just sticking to the same ways, not bringing any new devices, apart from VR. That's what they're doing. They're delving into VR, right? And it's not going well in terms of VR for Sony. That is a conversation for another day. Spoiler alert, I still think VR is never going to take off until it is glasses like I'm wearing on my face today. Yeah, so back to the future. There's a pun for you, a movie pun. Here we are again today. Microsoft are kind of identifying that console market isn't growing. Young people aren't buying video games and don't care about consoles. So Microsoft are back into the services and subscriptions and services and software like they've always done with Office. You know, it doesn't matter how popular Apple is and how, you know, everyone loves a MacBook or stuff like that. If everyone's using Office on those MacBooks, or Office 365, and, you know, just the same way like colleges use Office 365 and big businesses and stuff like that, Microsoft are raking it in. They're doing just fine with Office. And they're just applying this model to gaming, right? They're not going to get out of hardware. That's the news that's coming out. You know, people think, oh, they're just going to kill the Xbox and just move to software and services. Nope. Like Windows do still produce hardware, Microsoft is still going to produce hardware for Xbox, because there are people out there who are, it's just, you know, they're comfortable in it and they will continue to buy it. They're going to do different hardware. I've talked about the handheld before. Very excited for that. Handheld will do so much for them. But yeah, we're in this position now where they've acquired these studios, and now they've got all their games are like in the top 25 on the PS Store. I've been around the houses there, but this is a glimmer into where it's going. You might not like it. You might think, well, you know, this is not gaming we know and love. It's not how it's always been. It just doesn't matter. It's happening. It's happening whether you like it or not. And it's just a matter of time before Sony start to do the same thing, unless they shoot themselves in the foot and they collapse. They're already doing it. They're doing the cross-platform releases with PC day one, like they did with Helldivers. So it's happening, spreading like a virus. But like I say, it will be a good thing once the other platforms start to open up more as well. And we can all just play the games everywhere. And then we've got, I like my preference. I like the Xbox box that I've got because of the UI and the controller. I'm going to do that and just buy my games on there. And then so-and-so's over there saying, oh, I like that Sony gives me this extra bit of sound quality or something like that. Or I like the VR headset and they're going to lean more into that. Or I like their controller. And then we've got our digital libraries as well, which we'll want to take with us into the future. So there's always going to be a reason to have hardware. Handhelds, as I've said, are booming back into business. Sony obviously have their Portal, which isn't native, but apparently are working on a native handheld as well. Xbox apparently working on a native handheld. Steam Deck, ROG Ally, Legion Go, all these handhelds that are just exploding. Steam is, Steam, the platform, getting their games onto all these handhelds. And Microsoft and Sony just want to do the same thing. So yeah, it's if you're not paying attention, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. The industry is going this way, and it's good that the proprietary stuff and kind of locked off stuff is good in some aspects, because nobody can do everything. I'm fine with, we might say we ended up in a future where all the games are on all the platforms, but Xbox give up on the controllers, and it's just like, we let the Sony controllers work on our box or something like that. Great. So now, would Sony be open to that? At the moment, no. But in the future, they either may not have any choice, or they'd just be too stupid not to, because of the deal that Microsoft offer them or something. They're all going to work together. They're all going to be licensing stuff. You think of just the way the internet works and how, many websites already lease server space from Amazon, right? And the way that Sony already licenses technology, is it cloud technology for Sony, right? The discs, the Blu-ray discs. Blu-ray is a Sony proprietary. Why can't I speak today? You know why I can't speak. I'm tired. Sony invented Blu-ray. Blu-ray is a fantastic technology, and Sony licensed it to everyone that wants to make Blu-ray. So every physical game that Xbox sells, Sony makes money. It's already happening, it's just the kind of console warring and exclusivity stuff is also surface level. They're already all working together. They're going to continue to work together because they have to. Because, like I say, nobody's buying consoles. We're a dying breed, and they'll just be bringing out new bits of hardware instead that are different and can accommodate this want to play all the games that we know and love in one place, and we just have our little preferences here and there. So yeah, take note. Look at all those Xbox games on the PlayStation Store. It's good fun. I want the PlayStation games. Give them to me. I can't afford to buy a PS5, but I could buy some PlayStation games if they're on the Xbox Store or on Game Pass. Make it happen. So yeah, God, that was a weird fucking ramble, right? I made like 20 minutes out of 2 paragraphs there from that article. But yeah, let me know what you think. I think it's a good thing. Like, obviously, I'm not promoting big acquisitions all day non-stop, but it's just, yeah, there's no money in hardware. The money is in the software and services. Sony are going to be doing it as well. Nintendo as well. They're going to ride it out for a bit longer because they're Nintendo, and they've got a gimmicky thing coming soon with the Switch 2, which everyone can't wait to see. Yeah, so gaming's not dying. Xbox is definitely not dying. They're dominating more than ever, just not in the way that you think not in the way that everyone kind of expected them to. And it's shifting. It's very fluid. It's always happening very quickly all the time. These plans are probably very different to plans they had 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Anyway. Next, Fallout Resurgence. So this is in the same article. The Fallout TV show on Prime premiered last week, causing a surge of interest in the franchise. Every Fallout game saw player counts soar on Steam, and several entries from the franchise become the bestsellers on Steam and GOG. At its high point in terms of player count, Fallout 4 had 472,000 concurrent players, but that was 9 years ago. The game's player count sat between 18 and 20,000 before the TV show launched, but the surge in interest of the franchise, Fallout 4's player count spiked to 53,000. Other games, including Fallout 76 and Fallout 3 and New Vegas, saw similar spikes. Fallout TV show has earned rave reviews for its first season, etc., etc. Obviously I'm a big Fallout fan. I have a Fallout podcast with my buddy Eric. We've just put out our part 1 overview of season 1 of the show. Spoiler alert, I really, really liked it. I kind of poured my heart out on that episode. Please go and listen to it. I talked for like an hour about the show, so go and listen to that, and go and watch the show if you haven't. But this is an important thing because I don't want to repeat myself too much. Like I say, I'm not going to talk about the show here, but Fallout is back in the news. Fallout is having a moment, and this sort of links back to something I talked about a couple of episodes ago about old games dominating. And so those player counts obviously were really high. And then gamesindustry.biz talked about game sales in Europe last week. And some of you may have heard this, some of you may not. Fallout 4 is now the number 1 selling game in Europe this past week. And 4 games in the top 10 of the top selling games in Europe are all Fallout games. Here are the top 10, and this is digital and physical games. Top 10 games sold in Europe last week. This is up to the 18th of April. Number 1, Fallout 4. Number 2, Helldivers 2. Number 3, EA Sports FC 24. Number 4, Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 5, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Number 6, Red Dead Redemption. Number 7, Hogwarts Legacy. 8, 9 and 10, respectively, Fallout 76, Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3. So, there's a couple of new ones in there. Helldivers, that's still having a boom and stuff. But like I talked about on previous episodes, old games continue to dominate. They continue to dominate on Xbox and PlayStation. Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, all these games that are really old. And here we have the top selling game in the past year is a 9-year-old game. When you think about like when you were a kid playing video games and you think about the jump between 9 years of the video games that you were playing. So if I think, right, I'm playing Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System, and then less than 9 years later, I'm playing Resident Evil on PS1. That's a huge jump. At no point was Sonic the Hedgehog on Master System coming back into the number 1 selling game. I mean, I could be wrong, caveat there. I really don't think I am. 9-year-old games did not jump back to the number 1 spot. This isn't the music charts where they have a Christmas number 1 where they bring, Do They Know It's Christmas Time to come back and get to number 1 every year or something. This is not the same for games. Until now. These past few years, now more than ever, we're living in a time where it doesn't matter if your game's 10 years old. Doesn't matter if it's 5 years old. And this is a combination of live service, demands and just popularity and cross-promotion and transmedia. Fallout 4 being number 1 9 years later. It's like, okay, you can say, oh, but it's a quiet month for games. There was no other big releases. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because those other old games are there to prove the point. GTA 5 is still selling. It's still selling. I don't understand how it's still selling. Doesn't everyone who has a games console or a PC, have they not just already bought it? Or, or a gaming PC? Okay, now, no, they haven't, but it's just mind-blowing that... And again, I know some people listening to this just do not care about this stuff. You just want to go and play your games. Fine. It interests me because, as I said, it's indicative. Is that the right word? The implications it has for the future of gaming are huge. And we've already seen recently in the news Sarah Bond at Xbox. She's running the hardware over there. She's confirmed they've put a team together to really think about forward and backward preservation for games, because they're looking at these lists and going, whatever fucking piece of hardware or service we make in the next 10 years, it needs to run games that are out now, because nobody's playing new games. Which isn't true. Of course people are playing new games. The evergreen games don't seem to be new games. So yeah, it's wild. I mean, Fallout 4, there's a lot of discourse about that game. I think Fallout 4 is an incredible game. It just gets a lot of shit because it's not as good as Fallout 3. And it's like, so what? Stop trying to say it's shit because it's not as good as Fallout 3. That doesn't mean it's shit. It's still a good game. The stuff you can do in that game is awesome. Yeah, so as a Fallout fan, for me, it's awesome to see the boom that Fallout is having. And yeah, and like I say, I've talked a lot about it on Tapes from the Wastes, so please do go and check that out. And yeah, people jumping back to Fallout 76 even, a game that was trashed years ago. A live service game that persists while many others have crumbled. I like to use that phrase a lot. Apparently all the games are all on massive sale as well. You can get like Fallout 3 for like £2.50. So if you don't have it, just go and buy it. What are you waiting for? It's one of the best games ever made. Yeah, people are only playing old games. Or at least they're playing new games for like a week and then not bothering. Although it was funny because when I was talking about that old games list a couple of episodes ago, wasn't it, of all the games played in was it all the games, I can't remember the stat exactly, it was all the games played in 2023, they were all old games, right, apart from Starfield. And the internet would have you believe Starfield is a terrible game that no one's playing. You're incorrect. It's not a terrible game. Yeah. It's weirdly, for such a huge game, it's definitely niche, but it's so unniche that it's in the top 10 most played games of 2023. Yeah. And I think it's wasn't it the only single player new game? I don't have the list in front of me, but it was like maybe one of two. I don't think Spider-Man made it in there. I don't think, we're looking at other new games that have come out, and this is another random thought. I'm seeing all the talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and how Square Enix are shitting themselves because the sales have not been good. And it's like, I wonder why. Oh, here's a stat I heard. Pikmin 4 outsold Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Please fact check that for me, but I read that stat and I believe it, because everything else I'm hearing is that Square Enix are really unhappy with the sales of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I wonder if this console exclusivity they have with Sony might not be the best business strategy for getting people on board with Final Fantasy. Just a thought. There's probably a reason I don't really play the Final Fantasy games. It's because most of the the ones that people rave about aren't available on Xbox. Certainly Remake isn't. 7 Remake. I would play it if it was on Xbox. I'm not buying a PlayStation just to play it. It shouldn't be exclusive. Get it on Xbox. Sort it out. And again, it's not up to me to, I guess, get angry about that. I mean, it's Microsoft's job and it's Xbox's job to sort that out. But yeah, this can't carry on. Square Enix will, yeah, Sony are changing their strategy. Square Enix will at some point. I'm sure we'll see Remake and Rebirth on Xbox in the future, whatever that Xbox service is. Yeah, and I have a lot of friends that love Final Fantasy. I've been talking about Rebirth, and I've seen them get very frustrated with the end game and the later parts of the game. And between poor fan reception, I'm not saying it's not completely poor fan reception. Loads of people obviously love it, but if you're upsetting a lot of fans and you're also just exclusive to one platform, maybe it's time to try and find some new fans, broaden your horizons, get yourself on some other platforms, right? Yeah, it's changing. I keep saying it. You all know it. I'm not being super insightful here, but like I say, I use this podcast as, I don't really tweet about this stuff. I just can't be bothered. There's no fucking point tweeting about this stuff. You can't have detailed conversations about it. And I know I'm not having a conversation. I'm just having a ramble. I'm having a long tweet with my voice to you. Come and talk to me about it if you want to talk to me. If you think I'm wrong, if you think this is, and not just me, if you think all these other analysts and reporters and stuff, you think they're wrong as well about this strategy and what it means for the future of Xbox and gaming. You're like, nah, Sony are going to ride it out and we're going to go back to the closed walled garden model that's been the same forever. Come and explain to me why. Anyway, right, okay, I said this wasn't going to be a long one, but I have definitely been going on. Very, very small gameplay section. As I said, I've had an incredibly busy week. I am still playing Gears Tactics, which we're going to be covering on Gears Intel next weekend, or the weekend after. It's really soon, finishing Gears Intel, so I'm kind of Gears Tactics. Great game though, but lots to say. A little bit repetitive at times, but we're going to get into it. Let's come and check out Gears Intel for Gears of War stuff. So not much video games this week, but also there was one specific thing, and again links back to stuff that I've talked about here. Mobile gaming. I re-downloaded and reinstalled Fallout Shelter. There you go. This connects to the big Fallout boom. Fallout Shelter still going, new updates. They released the characters from the show in the game, and I talked on the other podcast, the Fallout podcast, about I really hope Fallout 76 does more cross promotion and the characters show up. They've done a few cosmetics and stuff, but nothing crazy. But because that show is canon to Fallout, it means the characters can show up. Fallout Shelter isn't canon because it's a mobile game, but they've done some more and they've brought the characters into the show. So this is a game that obviously came out the same time as Fallout 4, 9 years old. I'm playing it again, and I'm like, oh, shall I just spend a $5 and get a little booster pack there? Yeah, I'm single-handedly destroying the gaming industry model we all know and love by indulging in microtransactions. I don't care, all right? If they're delivering an enjoyable experience, I'll pay, all right? So yeah, loving Fallout Shelter. If you've never played Fallout Shelter, install it. It's available on everything. It's an awesome little time kill. I installed Diablo Immortal, but I haven't started it yet as well. So yeah, I'm back in the mobile gaming game. So I'm on the hunt for good games, good mobile games. Recommend them to me, please, because my time is limited. And yeah, I'm loving having my decent phone that can run games smoothly. Really taking advantage of that. So yeah, not too much to say about Fallout Shelter. We did do a full episode on Tapes from the Waste from Fallout Shelter, where we also interviewed, or at least Eric interviewed, Andrew from the Fallout feed as well. It's a huge episode, and he's obsessed with Fallout Shelter. So go back and look through our archives for that. So yeah, but I am going to wrap it up there because there's really not a lot of gaming stuff to talk about. There's not a lot of new games coming out. Hellblade 2 is coming out in May. That's going to be a big focus for me. But yeah, just more mobile games, more gaming news, gaming topics coming up soon. Thank you for listening. I didn't really make a big fuss about my coffee today, but as you know, this is Gaming Aroma Podcast, fueled by coffee. My stomach's rumbling as well. I haven't had my breakfast yet. I'm going to go crack on with my Sunday. Have a fantastic day, you motherfuckers, wherever you are. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.